Hi everyone, my name is Kajal Galotra and in this video we are going to discuss about dependency injection. First, try to understand what exactly is the meaning of this term dependency injection. In this project we'll have two classes. One is the student class. Inside this student class I have three parameters: name, address and ID. These all are the getters and setters of all the parameters, and this is the constructor. We have just the parameterized constructor. Then we have the toString method. If now student class is having one more class with the name called address. Student and address will have a has a relationship. What is has a relationship? If let's say one class is there and inside that class you are referring to some another class, right? So these two classes will have a relationship. Now if I'll go into this address class will still have the street, city, pin code and state. So a student address can be stored as a custom class address class. Okay, so now this basically is a main class from where I'll be calling my student and address classes. Now in order to create an object of student class, I can do student equals to new student, correct? But because I do not have any default constructors, so I'll have to pass the name. Let's say my student name is John. I have to pass the address, but I do not have any address, right? So in order to pass the address, I am creating an object of address first. Inside this address I have to pass the street. So let's say my street is Model Street, and then I have to pass my city. So my city is okay. Then so in my case my pin code is 125001. So in my case the state is Haryana. These four parameters were required in order to create an object of address class. I have to pass this address inside the student. Can I use the reference variable of address? Third parameter is the ID. Now, what exactly is a dependency injection? See, the student class is dependent upon address class. Class of student object cannot be created until unless we have an object of address class. So that means the student class is dependent upon address class. That's how they have dependency. And by writing or by passing the reference variable of address in my line number 17, I'm passing the reference variable of address while creating an object of student. That's how I am resolving the dependency. So here I can say I am injecting the dependencies into the student object. So this is known as dependency injection. What is dependency injection? When you are injecting any dependency anywhere, like in an object, in order to create an object you are required an object of another class. That is the dependency, and you are injecting that dependency. This is known as dependency injection. Okay, now the question arises, who is injecting this dependency? The coder, right? If I am doing the code, I am injecting this dependency. Okay, but now there is one more thing which comes into picture, which is Spring framework. Okay, so what Spring says that hey coder, you just give me the control, I'll do this in dependency injection. That's how the control from coder goes in hands of Spring, and the Spring is doing the dependency injection. That concept is known as inversion of control. The control which developer was holding earlier, now Spring is holding that control. This is known as inversion of control. I think you got a basic idea about the terms, the dependency injection, where you are injecting the dependency. Now it depends upon who is injecting it, whether coder is injecting it or maybe Spring is injecting it. If Spring is injecting it, so that says inversion of control. So the control has been gone from developer to Spring. Okay, so creating an object, injecting that object into another class will be done by Spring. Okay, that is inversion of control. This is a kind of bucket which Spring going to use in order to resolve the dependencies. Now you know there is a bucket which Spring is going to use in order to inject the dependencies. How? In our case we had two classes, one is student and one is address. So first is address class. So address class object will be kept inside this bucket. There is an object which is already present in the bucket. Now whenever I am going to create an object of student class and I'll try to insert that into bucket, then what will happen? First it will check the dependencies. So first it will check whether we have any object present in the bucket with the name called address? Yes or no? If object is present in the bucket, in that case it will take that from out of that bucket. Via that object, it will take that reference of that object, and with the reference of it will create an object of student class. This bucket is not known as bucket. This we call as application context. You can also say it bean factory. Now question arises, I know there is a bucket in which all the objects will be present. Now who will put all the objects into that? I'll take an example of XML. In XML file, I'll be telling that what are the objects that needs to be present inside the bucket. The objects that are present in the bucket, and Spring uses that object in order to resolve the dependencies, are known as beans. What are beans? So beans are the objects created and maintained by Spring in order to resolve the dependencies. Okay, this is the only difference between normal object and Spring Beans. Now let's have a look on how exactly the beans are getting created inside this bean factory or application context. In my project, I am trying to make a bucket full of beans. So for that, there is a file that you have to create, which is an XML file. Let's see what is there inside this XML file. First of all, version is defined for the XML. Then this is bean XML namespace. This is the basic format that you have to follow whenever you want to tell Spring that what are the beans that are required within my project. You are not going to create the beans, but you are just going to tell Spring that, hey Spring, create these beans for me, for my project. Spring is creating the beans, but I have to tell what type of beans I'll be needing in my projects. You have to define what exactly is the class, of which class you want to create a bean of. I'll have to, mention the packages. I have a class called student. For this class, I want to make a bean. This ID will be bean, identifier of my bean. For example, I'm saying student. So now whenever I want to grab this bean out of bucket, I'll say that, hey Spring, give me the bean by the identifier called student. So if inside the student, what are the properties? Name, address and ID. So I'll say I want to set the property by the name called name. I can say John is the value of the name, and one property is set. The second property is, let's say, ID. What is the value of this ID? 1. Maybe right now the ID is 1. Then I have to set one more property by the name called address. But I do not have any value. In order to provide the property value of address, I'll need one more bean. So for that, I'll create bean first. Okay, I'll say bean with the class name org.demo.address ID. What exactly is the ID? ID is address. So now I want to create a bean of address class in which I want to keep the identifier as an ID. Inside this address, I'll have another properties. So one was the street, and I can provide the value as model street. So the another property was city, and in my case the value is Hisar. Okay, and then I have the pin code, and the value is 125001, and at the end I have one more thing, which is state. Now if I have a bean of address class, I can provide the reference of that. So what exactly is this reference? Whatever bean you have with the reference called name address, just inject it here. Okay, so this is all about that's it. Now I'll be creating one more class with the name called dependency injection demo. Inside this dependency injection demo, I'll have public static void main again, and inside this public static void main, I'll be using class path XML application context. This is the class that I'm going to use, and inside this I'll just pass the XML ka path. In my case, project bean.xml. But now the problem is, in my external libraries I only have Java 17. I do not have any other external libraries, and creating bean is not a part of Java, it is a part of Spring framework. So I cannot create the bucket only by Java, so I'll have to add the dependency for that. How can I add? I'll just say add Maven dependency, and it will start looking for the classes. So this is present inside this Spring context, so I'll just add it. Once I'll click on add, you can see external libraries mein we have a lot of more things except Java 17. If I'll go into my POM, inside this POM I have the dependency added. Okay, so now I'll go back because my dependency have been added for using this class. I'll just import the class. Once importing is done, I created a bucket. I helped Spring in order to create the beans that are present in my project bean XML. Bean creation is done by Spring. It's not done by us, but I provided a direction to Spring that for what classes and by what name the beans should be created. Now everything is done. Now I'll just have to get the beans out of that bucket. For that you have a method called getBean. What exactly this getBean will do? This getBean will get the beans out of the bucket. I want to get a bean out of that bucket by the name called student. Okay, because if I'll go back is I have a bean by the name called student, so that I can get that out of my bucket. But now the point is this getBean returns you an object. It does not returns you an object of student. So so I'll say student. I downcasted that object into a student class object. Now I'll just say system out.println and I'll say student. So now what is the problem here? So it did not get executed. It clearly says no default constructor found. So in order to create a bean, you should provide the default constructor in every class. So if you will see the student class, it does not have any default constructor. So if I'll just have to add the default constructor, select none. I'll have to provide the default constructor of address. Now if I'll try to run this again, now you will see the output because the default constructors have been added. Okay, now you can see this is the object of student in which the dependency on address class has been resolved by the Spring. Now what do you think? Why the default constructors were required? Write it down. Why default constructors were required? If you don't know it, then you can just mention it in the comment. I'll give you why the default constructors were required. Thank you so much.